Good afternoon. It is wonderful to see everybody here today. I'm Michael Benarroch. I am the President and Vice Chancellor of the University of Manitoba. I'm honored to moderate this today. We have 4 experts. I'm not the expert. I'm only here because I'm the President of the University of Manitoba. Today we're going to have a talk about life, loss, and love, lessons in aging. And I think we have 4 people who are going to be able to really contribute a lot to this discussion. And I've had the opportunity to speak with all of them. We had a meeting. I've had the opportunity to interview Dr. Chochinov, and I think we'll have a very engaging discussion here today. We're going to start asking Al Benarroch, the chair of the board of the Simkin Center, to please come and say some words.
Hi everyone, welcome. The Benarroches are not taking over, I promise. My brother and I also have a connection, close and deep connection to the Simkin Center. Our mother was a resident here for close to 6 years. And I think the topic of today's discussion truly resonates. Life, loss, love, all of that was clearly part of the care that she received. I want to welcome everybody here on behalf of the Board of Directors. I also want to welcome and happy for our partnership with the Chesed Shel Emes. We work very closely together as community organizations, coming together as community to be able to support everyone in our community at all stages of life, and particularly as they approach end of life. It's a very deep value in our Jewish community, which I'm sure Rabbi Matthew will probably speak of. And so I want to welcome everybody. I'm sure we're going to have a very educational, enjoyable, and engaging afternoon. So welcome.
Thank you. And now I'd like to ask Rabbi Matthew to please give us a small orator to start us today.
Sure. Thanks. I was zoning out when I was talking about. He looked at me and he said my name. I don't know what he's talking about, so I can't deliver on that promise. I don't know what it was. I was trying to think about the Devar Torah. I'm not sure. It's Sunday. You're supposed to talk about the coming weeks. But I'm going to talk about a lesson maybe from yesterday's parsha that was read in the synagogue. The portion this week, I think, was Noah. Oh, very good. Everyone's just making sure that I knew it. Okay, great. It would have been awkward if I had Devar Torah prepared for a different parsha. The Noah one. Okay, the Noah one. What's really interesting about Noah, who, by the way, was not Jewish. It's before there were Jewish people as anything, and you always like to point that out. What's interesting about Noah is he's described as a tzaddik. It's a very important word, right? It's a righteous person. This is not, I'm to understand, a term that is actually to its fullest definition just doled out. They say that there's only 36 tzaddikim in every generation in one little story in Jewish history, Lam and Vav, 36. So it's not the kind of thing where, but I think it is something that everybody can aspire to, or at least have certain elements of being righteous. What's interesting about Noah is that they don't tell us enough to answer the question, was Noah righteous in any generation or just in his generation? Because you'll remember, the rest of the world, everybody had to be gotten rid of, destroyed. Noah was the only one in his family who was deemed allowed to stay because they were righteous. The question that's always asked is, was he righteous in comparison? Was he the only righteous person among all of these terrible people? And he was maybe actually only a 5 out of 10, but in a world of 1 out of 10 righteousness? And would he have stood up in a world like ours, or a world like anywhere else? But it begs the bigger question for each of us. When we're evaluating our own righteousness, do we do it in relation to other people, or do we do it in relation to a different way of measuring it? Do we measure it against ourselves? My grandfather always used to say that when you played golf, you were playing against yourself. maybe somebody says that's true. I guess golf's pretty dumb. I don't really like golf, but it makes sense to me in life, and especially in this conversation, that if you're leaning towards measuring yourself really only in comparison to others with regard to anything, but certainly with how you uphold your values and do what is right, maybe not the best way to go about it. Something to just think about. Okay. Small? Small.
Thank you. Thank
Have a
you.
good weekend. I'm going to leave now. That's it. That's my point.
We're not going to let you go that quickly. So we have 4 panelists who are going to help us work through a few questions today. And we want to focus a little bit on dignity and living well in your third act. You know, in the last third of your life, being able to find purpose and aspire to fulfill each and one of our potential. And then, you know, a little bit about, you know, what the purpose is and at end of life. And so joining us today on the panel is Blackman, the manager of residential experience at the Saul and Claribel Simkin Center. She was previously the adult day program coordinator for more than 20 years, beginning her career in long-term care as a recreation facilitator. Heather brings a deep passion for people, creativity, and engagement. And you know, her philosophy is not that we can't, but why can't we? And a belief that the freedom of choice is always a consideration. I think one of her most innovative and memorable initiatives was the Amazing Race Simkin and the Interfacility Olympics. I thought those were both really creative and interesting programs. We've also got Dr. Harvey Chochinov, a Canada Research Chair in Palliative Care, distinguished professor at the University of Manitoba, and senior scientist at the Cancer Care Manitoba Research Institute. And he's been studying palliative care and person-centered care for 35 years. I would just to let you know that he was a guest on my podcast, What's the Big Idea? My people at UFM told me I had to plug that. But it actually was the most popular one that we've done, and the week after it was released, it hit the top 5% of podcasts in Canada. None of my other podcasts have done that. Just a fun fact about him, in a previous life he was a member of the dance band Special Blend. So if you were hosting a wedding or bar mitzvah sometime, or bat mitzvah, between 1975 and 1985, Dr. Chochinov probably played at your bat mitzvah. Also today we have Rabbi Matthew Leibl. He's the rabbi here at the Simkin Center for the last 2 years, and you can catch him on Friday nights with Ask the Rabbi, or host of the Simkin podcast called Shalom in the Home. But he's also on another podcast that my wife and I have been listening to, one from the Canadian Jewish News called Not in Heaven. And if you haven't heard it, you should listen to Not in Heaven. You should download that podcast wherever you listen to your podcast. He officiates weddings and funerals, bar mitzvahs, mitzvahs, and you know, one of his claims to fame was that he was TSN host. You know, cheering on. I hope you're cheering on the Blue Jays now. So, also today we have Sara, Reid, who's the assistant director of care at the Simkin Center, and she's been part of the Simkin community since 2002. Beginning as a summer recreation student before becoming a unit nurse, and eventually moving into her current role. She's dedicated to resident-centered care and brings compassion, expertise, and commitment to everything she does. And so thank you all for joining us today. So just want to let everybody know that this session is being recorded, so that you should all know. And we'll hopefully have some time at the end for people to ask questions. We're going to start with a question, and maybe we'll start with you, Dr. Chochinov, and we'll move down the aisle, everybody having an opportunity to answer. How do we create a space for residents to experience joy, purpose, and dignity in their everyday lives.
You don't want to start with a softball
Sorry.
question, no. So, Viktor Frankl was a psychoanalyst. He was a Holocaust survivor, and he wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning. And in this book, his basic premise is that if people have a why to live, then they'll discover a how to live. This was actually a realization that came to him when he was interned in a concentration camp. He also said that suffering ceases to be suffering when it discovers meaning. So what does that have to do with the question and discovering meaning in the here and now? I think it says that if we have a reason to wake up in the morning, if there's something that gives our existence meaning, then life feels worthwhile. Life feels tolerable. I have studied for more years than I like to remember, but it's been at least 35 and counting. Been studying issues related to human dignity, and I mean there are various different complexities that we could talk about. But one of the things that we have discovered in talking with lots of people who are near the end of life is that the thing that is most predictive of whether or not somebody's dignity is held intact is their sense of how others perceive them. In other words, are they valued? I kind of use the word affirmation. Do they feel a sense of affirmation when they're with other people? Metaphorically, I mean, if they look, whether it's to the healthcare provider, a family member, and the only thing they see reflected back is, their illness or their problems or their challenges, then they feel like they somehow no longer matter. What I wrote about is that somehow patienthood has eclipsed personhood. So how do we make living here, how do we make life feel worthwhile? We make sure that when we get up in the morning, that there feels like there is something to get up for, whatever that something is. And we're surrounded by people who see us as being more than just whatever challenges we're facing, but being whole, unique, and worthwhile people.
Thank you, Sarah.
So I think it's important to acknowledge people for the titles that they hold in this world. Their mothers and daughters, their grandparents, their chess players, their piano players. And like Harvey said, it's important to recognize what people are, who they are, and what they continue to like to do to give a purpose and get out of bed in the morning. So looking at our resident experience and what we can do to help promote that for our residents, it's offering them a choice of, do you want to wake up now or should I come back in half an hour and get our day started? Do you want me to help pick out your clothes or do you know what you want to wear today? When it's mealtime, it's offering, do you want coffee or tea with your meal? Although often residents will say, you know what I want, don't ask me anymore. But that's part of the customer service experience. I quite enjoy going into Starbucks and they know what I like because I frequent there enough. And our residents appreciate that experience too. Our residents have lived amazing lives and continue to add such value to those of us around them. Mothers especially are always trying to take care of everyone else. Our residents continue to do that. They look out for the people that they sit and have meals with. They want to help folding face cloths and clothing protectors and making contributions that way. Today when you came in, you saw residents greeting you as you came in because this is their home and this is part of the value that they add to it. We have another resident who is an avid piano player and entertains the masses as often as he is able to, and how appreciative we are of him being able to do that for us. We have another resident who I'm very close to, who often likes to talk about his transit experience as a bus driver. And I volunteer for a program called Be My Eyes on my phone. It's an app where a person who's visually impaired can call the app and it rings through to a volunteer, and then you help them with a task. So I've told him about this, and one day he's in my office and my phone beeps, and it's a call coming in from Be My Eyes. So he helps me answer this call and provide some assistance to a visually impaired person. And through the call, we got to chat, where is this person from, where are we from? And apparently I didn't explain well enough where Winnipeg was on the map. So my friend then came back to me the next day with a script of how I should describe where Winnipeg is to the next visually impaired person that calls me and that I'm able to help. So I think our residents have lots of opportunity to continue to contribute in so many ways. And I think Heather and her team do an amazing job of creating experiences for people to continue to get to enjoy.
Thank you, Sarah. Heather.
Well, it is a why as well. Can you hear me? No? Well, share. Can you hear me now? Yes. Okay, excellent. All right, so it is a why, right? Why we create joy and purpose for our residents. But something that I find very interesting is I don't think that the joy and purpose is necessarily in those big things we do. Because we do some great fun things here. We have great outings, we bring people in, right? And those are the big things. But I actually think it's those day-to-day things in people's lives that are the most important, that provide that. So a good cup of coffee in the morning. And as I was thinking about this question, an experience I had here came to mind. And I don't know if everyone knows, but in the summer months, we started this last summer, we started having a fire pit outside regularly. So we, some evenings, people just sit around the fire pit, right, and talk. We might have s'mores one night. One night we had someone in to do a sing-along during the fire pit. And that is something that my family and I do, actually. We do a fire pit in our backyard. It's just part of life, right? And we had the first fire pit when I was here. And one of the residents, she came a little bit closer to the fire pit, and she saw me watching her, and she took a deep breath in, and she said to me, "That wood smoke smells so good." And she said, "I never thought I'd ever get a chance to smell wood smoke again." And it hit me in the heart. It was so profound, right? To think something you do in your everyday life that you enjoy, just suddenly you wouldn't be able to do again. So it's very profound. And I think it just brought to light the fact that, this quality of life we need to provide. It provides the meaning, and without those things, we are just an institution.
Thank you.
One time you have to start with me so that I don't have to try and follow all the good answers. I would say, to add and conclude maybe, is this idea that I get a lot of people who come to me and they seem to be struggling to find purpose and meaning. Whether they're articulating it, I can see that they're struggling for one reason or another, particularly in the last 2.5 years since I have been working here. I will tell you that it is very difficult to find purpose and meaning bemoaning not having purpose and meaning. It's easy to get very caught up in that, but I've never seen anyone find purpose like that. My answer to those people is actually the same whether you live here, have family here, or if you're young, or anywhere in between. You have to go out and try. You have to try. I get a lot of people who, I had a guy who would say, I'm not enjoying it. I said, you should come to our Friday night Shabbat program. You like concerts, you like music, you're always listening to stuff on your phone, you should come. And he said, no, I'm way too grumpy to go to that. And I said to him, that's exactly why you should go to it, because you're very grumpy. Didn't motivate him, but the last couple of weeks started coming, and it took a long time. Once he finally tried, sometimes my advice falls on deaf ears, but it's always the same answer. If you don't go out and, my wife listens to this podcast,
put yourself in the arena. It's very difficult to get anything out of life. I remember that line from the last Beatles song, The End. And in the end, the love you make is equal to the love you take. It's not just the love, it's what you put out into life is what you're going to get back. So for people who find themselves at a crossroads, particularly in the last act of their lives, I think the trick is to, especially at a place like this, it's easier, I think, at a place like Simkin Center where there are so many programs and there are so many opportunities, and you can try and you can go and you can see, I didn't like that, I liked it. The best part is maybe going to a program and hating it because you know you never have to go back. But it at least gets you closer to finding the things that you want to go back to. So I think that the only thing I would add is that for some people who might be searching for a purpose, thinking about it won't really ever get you the results like try.
Thanks for that. And you can start to see the themes arising and the connections through everything the four of you are saying. So, thinking about that, finding the purpose, how can we help individuals identify what's essential to their personal dignity, especially later in life? Rabbi Matthew, it's all with you.
I like my answer from before, but I think that our role, I really like what Sara said about giving choice. But I think like in my particular area of this place, where we have programs from spiritual health, spiritual care, I think that for us, it's about finding ways to make that the most accessible as possible, right? In the world of being a rabbi, in particular in this place, or in any kind of, I think, faith-based version of healing, that a lot of people are not receptive to it for various reasons. They don't say that they don't believe, this is not what they want, all kinds of reasons. But also, from Judaism, which I know the best, some of our services, some of the mechanisms are old. And to many people, they're old-fashioned. I think the best thing about being able to find joy in life is if we can create programs that feel relevant, that people can relate to, whether that's redefining or retranslating old prayers or things like that, so that people can kind of have an appreciation or a sense of what a holiday might be like in 2025. It's all about relating to their lives. So I think that you can find joy. You create a program that will lead you to joy. If you understand your audience, you create something that they can relate to.
Harvey.
I'm going to have at least a few more people to sort of reflect on what do I want to say. There's just so many places to go with this. Again, I know I quoted Viktor Frankl, the other person that comes to mind, just because I work in hospice. There's a very famous woman, Dame Cicely Saunders. Dame Cicely Saunders is to palliative care what Mick Jagger is to rock and roll. That's kind of her caliber of influence. And she said that suffering only becomes intolerable when no one cares. So again, getting back to this idea, so how do you invoke joy? How do you find joy? Connectedness, knowing that there is someone there. And the other thing, you were saying in some ways it's easier here, and you pointed out many programs, there's also people. There's an opportunity for connection. And two quick things around connection. And it's not complicated, but it's profound. One is ask people what you need to know about them as a human being in order to kind of understand who they are. It's the basis of a conversation. We've been using that in our work in palliative care. Now it's being used in various different places and facilities around the world. And it just changes the way that you see people. It changes your perception. So finding out who somebody is as a person, not their problem checklist, not their differential diagnosis, not their treatment plan, but who are you as a human being? The other thing that, again, it's very simple, but it's profound, is engage in storytelling. Find out find out their story. Reminiscence. There was a very famous geriatrician. He was actually the founder of geriatrics in the United States, a man named Robert Butler. And he was very famous for his writings about reminiscence. And reminiscence is an opportunity for people to reflect on their lives, to try and kind of make sense of it. What did it all mean? Eric Erickson, a developmental psychologist, talked about that in terms of integration. So asking people about their stories gives a person an opportunity to kind of put it together. And the other piece of it is there's a reciprocity. And what I mean by that is if you're sitting with interest, listening to someone's story, you are affirming that story. I mean, whether you do it verbally or just kind of sit there in awe, you are saying, you know, this really matters. I'm really interested. Rather than this person just kind of being left to their own devices and feeling that, you know, these stories that happened years ago or decades ago, they don't matter to anyone but me. Well, they matter when you give a person an opportunity to say it out loud and to be an audience for them.
Thank you for that. You know, again, Sara and Heather, when both of you were answering that first question, you were really both talking about giving people a choice and you know, giving them that opportunity. So I'm interested if the two of you can speak a little bit more of how we support the dignity of risk in a personal care home, and maybe you can explain what dignity of risk is and why this is important. Sara, do you want to start?
Absolutely, thank you. So I think we're going to switch it to share. We're good at sharing. Can you hear me through this one? Yeah, that's better. Okay, thank you. So looking at the dignity of risk really looks at shifting our focus from keeping somebody safe at all costs to creating a life that's meaningful to them in the safest way possible that they choose to live. If someone has been a risk taker all of their life, that's not going to stop when they come into care. If someone's cognitively able to make decisions for themselves, then we all choose to live with risk sometimes. We all choose to get on an airplane knowing that there's risk involved in that. We all choose not to put our seatbelt on as we back our car out of the driveway and put it on a little further down the road. So the risks we take in our everyday life now will continue to have risks that we can choose to take when we move into long-term care. So somebody who has diabetes and should be eating a specific diabetic diet and avoiding sugar maybe chooses to have ice cream every time it's on the menu because a life without ice cream is not a life worth living. I would make that choice for myself. A resident who maybe had an alcohol abuse disorder earlier in life and hasn't drank now chooses to have a drink of wine at a service or a glass of wine when they go out for lunch on a lunch outing and can make that choice. That's a risk that they're taking for themselves and one that we can support. They're safe when they're here. A resident that maybe doesn't want to call for help in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom but should because they might fall. Maybe we put a nightlight in their room and let them continue to have that independence to do some of those things on their own. So that's what dignity of risk means, that we can't bubble wrap people, nor do we want to. None of us want to live bubble wrapped, and our residents don't either. So offering some safe alternatives when there are risks, but respecting people's choices to live their life their way.
Great. You can hear me this time? Yes. Okay, so I'll just add to that, some of the things that I see in that is that we do provide that right dignity of risk, right to risk here. But I also notice that in ourselves sometimes we just naturally want to take that from people, and it's not a bad thing. It's because we all care. We're all carers, right? So staff, family, volunteers, even other residents really want to protect residents. And they even want to, I sometimes term it in my own mind as wrap them in cotton bag, right? Because we don't want anybody to get hurt. We care about the people, we love them. We don't want anyone to get hurt in any way, but we sometimes inadvertently then take away those choices that people should have. And I think about it in terms of gear in hockey. because some people just enjoy to have that ice cold beer while they're watching their hockey game. And all of a sudden, if you weren't able to have that, and that's such a piece of quality of life for you, right? It's more detrimental than the safety piece that we are putting forward in wanting to protect them.
Yeah, and even that, you had talked about that example of the person approaching the fire, and so you'd immediately want to pull them back, but yet it was such a positive experience, so just finding that point, it kind of resonated with this question. Thinking about the choices that are made, I mean, I'm sure, a number of us here have had a loved one aging, reaches a point where additional care has to be taken. How do we make health decisions for loved one before the crisis occurs? And so often we hear that a crisis has to occur before that individual will become part of that. So how can we help them manage that anxiety when it comes to that uncertainty? Sara?
So I think having conversations early and often when you're choosing someone to make your healthcare decisions, when there becomes a time when you're not able to. But then if you're supporting someone who's making their own healthcare decisions, making sure that you allow them to make the decisions that they want for themselves. And when it comes time for you to make those decisions, it's making sure that you are helping advocate for the decisions that the loved one would make for themselves if they could. So removing our own agenda and focusing on what that person has told you that they wanted. Talking about death and dying does not make it happen sooner, and not talking about death and dying doesn't make it stay away longer. So not being afraid to say, Mom, if you end up in a nursing home one day, what would you want in terms of your care? What are you willing to accept? What are you not willing to accept? And having those conversations before you get a phone call in the middle of the night that there's been a health crisis, and trying to figure out what you should do then, putting some thought into it beforehand. And I often talk to families about choosing the path of least regret. So making decisions that you're going to be able to sleep with at the end of the night as well. I often think that, my parents would do anything for me, so if there came a time where I had to make a health decision for them that perhaps wasn't a health decision they would have made for themselves, that's something they probably would have been okay doing for me. Going to the hospital, getting IV fluids to see if that can help fix me. I think that it's important to remember those pieces as well. Rabbi Matthew?
I don't think you really left me a lot. That was good. It's very, very good. This happens a lot. I can't give you I think families have to be on the same page. It's hard. It's easier said than done sometimes. But I think that if you're talking about a parent and you've got siblings, you need to talk to your siblings. You need to talk about this stuff. I can tell you better what not to do, which is really just the same thing. Not to not talk about it, right? That's the big thing, is that we see a lot of people who I think avoid the difficulty of the situation in spite of the fact that it is a very inevitable thing. I mean, this is a nursing home. This is a personal care home. This is what happens. I mean, there are reasons, as we tell all the residents who resist us, why people live here. And there are, it doesn't happen all the same. I can't say it's always the same, but there's a general path that people need to be at least accepting of, to the point where you can have a conversation with the people who are closest to you in your life, that you would want to bounce these ideas off of, whether you're the resident, whether you're the kid, whether you're the spouse, whether you're the grandkid, or somewhere else in the family tree. I think that as long as you're talking about it, and each family and each person will find their way. That's why I can't say this works. I know what I would do with my sister, I know what I would do with my parents, I know what we would at least try to do. And I think that the big thing is, what worries me about other families, is that what I see them do is not talk about it, because it's so hard. So as long as you're trying to find ways to tackle it, I don't think there is a wrong way other than silence.
Harvey, thoughts on that? Because I think, the things you write about probably align a lot about how we would have those kind of conversations.
No, I have written a lot about it, and I think it really kind of reinforces what we've heard. I mean, death is an inevitability, but not talking about it isn't going to forestall it, as Sara said. And there are great advantages in having the conversations, and we tend to think of the conversations as having to be extremely difficult and the thing that would just to be avoided at all costs. The fact is, if you can kind of get over that, if you can get over yourself, these conversations can be wonderful. Now, maybe part of that, I bear in mind, I grew up with a father who was an insurance salesman, and so sitting down at the table on a regular basis and talking about the likelihood that someone would die and it affecting their premium, this is what I grew up with. So these conversations never seemed like what is the big difficulty in talking about this? But the fact is, it's pretty important stuff that hangs in the balance. And most of us like to weigh in on all kinds of things that affect us in life. So to think that, we talk about everything, but we wouldn't talk about, what we would want to happen if we were ill. It just seems unfathomable. So, if it's sounding too difficult or too emotional, to try and kind of take it down to something that is very, not matter of fact, but the sort of the logic of, you're somebody who always, I'm not going to name who I'm thinking about, but you always like to have a say. You always like people to know what you would want. So, well, let's talk about that. If you were to get sick, so let me know, what is it that you would want to happen? Another little anecdote, and this is taking it away from death and dying, but it has to do with issues of making out a will. I was talking with a friend, contemporary, my age, and she was saying that it came out she didn't have a will. I said, are you serious? Both of us are nearing kind of 70-ish. I said, why is that? She says, oh, just talking about it, it's just too painful and too difficult. I said, oh my God, listen, as you said, talking about it isn't going to hasten it, and not talking about it isn't going to forestall it. So get yourself a lawyer. And now whenever I speak to this friend, she picks up the phone and I said, so you're not dead yet.
Let's talk a little bit about, kind of powerful moments that you may have experienced. Heather and Sara, what are some of those kind of sacred or powerful moments you've witnessed with the resident?
So the most powerful lesson or moment that comes to me in contemplating this is when I worked in the adult day program. And there was a woman who attended our adult day program for 13 years. So she came once a week to the adult day program, which is a social program, right, for 13 years. And I actually saw her more than I saw most of my own family. So this lady was an active participant. She had such great connections in the program. And towards the end of her time with us at the adult day program, she became terminally ill. And we were no longer able to meet her physical needs in the program. So we had to look at discharging her because we couldn't take care of her in the program. But here's the thing, right? So she was in her late 90s. She had come to the program for 13 years. She had limited family. A lot of her friends had passed away. Her co-workers were no longer contacts. The adult day program was her life. It was her support system. And at the worst time in her life, we were going to take that away because we could not meet her physical care needs anymore. So, as it turned out, she actually did end up passing away prior to us pulling the program. But it left an imprint for me, right? Which was the power of connection, right? Those were her connections. That was her support system. And it just underscored that, how important those friendships, those daily connections are to people.
Sarah.
So when I read this question, I had two stories that popped up in my mind. So when I first started in recreation, I was hosting a nail party afternoon. So we were getting everyone's fingernails painted. And one of our residents later on that afternoon was celebrating her 100th birthday and was hosting a very large birthday party, as one should when one turns 100. And I gave her a French manicure. And she looked at her nails and she went, 100 years I've wondered how people get white tips on their fingernails. And now I have them, so. That story has stuck with me all the days of my career. The second one that is more of an end-of-life story, a resident that lived here had moved to Canada from Barbados to take care of a family. That's how she landed in Winnipeg. And she took care of 2 or 3 generations of family, and that family in turn took care of her. But she was still very tied to her family in Barbados, and her dream was always to go back home to Barbados to die. So now it's time for her end-of-life experience. It looks like she has days left to live, and this was a time before Wi-Fi and all the ability to easily video call people. But the family that she took care of and was now taking care of her brought in a laptop and some sort of Rogers stick that gave you Wi-Fi, opened up Skype so that her family in Barbados could spend time with her one last time. And clinically, looking at this woman, she had days left to live. We get her all set up in bed, and I'm on one side of her and her good friend is on the other. And Barbados comes up on the screen, and it's a gorgeous sunny day in Barbados. The sun is pouring in her window on her face here in Canada, and her family talks to her from Barbados, and almost instantly her breathing changes. And within minutes she passes away with Barbados on the screen and her family around her. So that just really resonated with me, her spirit. She wanted to go home to Barbados one last time, and she truly got to.
Thank you, Sarah. That's really beautiful. Heather, you should know that my mother spent a number of years here, but she was in the day program before she came to Simkin, and my mother had dementia. And we would come to see her in a room or in the eating area, and she would look at us as we would come in, and she'd go, "What are you doing here?" "Well, we came to see you, Mom." "Oh, how did you know I was here?" "Well, we know you're here." "Oh, I just came for the day program. Are you taking me home, or is the bus taking me home?" This went on for quite a while with my mother. Her headspace was in that day program, which she so enjoyed coming to. And for the first year or 2 years when she was here, every time she saw us, somehow that's what got triggered for her. And so you would then be in the moment with her. It wasn't any use saying to her, "No, you live here," or whatever. It would be, "Yeah, no, we're not taking you home." So, but you were there in the moment because that was the moment she was in, and it just, to me, it was how impactful those relationships were, even though it was kind of near the end of life. Just thinking about then, that the lessons we might learn about life, love, or loss that you've learned through the work that you've been doing. Harvey, some thoughts on that?
Well, have learned and continue to learn. It always amazes me that, 35 years in, and it doesn't feel boring. It always feels interesting. And what a privilege to be with people and to be learning these profound insights. So there are too many to go over in a short time, but a couple of things come to mind. One is the importance of time. That there's probably nothing more precious that you can give to someone than time. It's not money, it's not fancy gifts, it's not, the big vacation that you say about, although this can be lovely, but it's time. And it's true when you're, raising children, spending time with them, and it's true in later life, being present, spending time. The other, and again, there's too little time to talk about it in a fulsome way to really kind of flesh it out the way it deserves to be. But the other thing that comes to mind is just how caring and caring connections are sustainable. And in some ways, they are things that even illness can't touch. And they also provide meaning. So I'm thinking of and I think I spoke about this on the podcast. This is a case of a young woman who had come to me, really tragic case, young woman, young marriage, young child, and she came to me because she wanted me to assist her in creating a legacy, writing down some things that this young child might be able to take forward in her life, because she said this child won't live, I won't live long enough for this child to remember me. And she was marvelous. She talked about her childhood and formative experiences and the things that she valued and sort of some hopes and wishes that she hoped might guide this child, permission for her husband to remarry with the proviso that he would find somebody who would care for a daughter the way a mother is meant to care for a daughter. And so we summarized this, we created this legacy that she could carry forward with her. And at the end of it, she said, that this intervention had helped prepare her daughter for life and helped prepare her for death. So I guess the take-home lesson is that for her, caring is something that illness couldn't touch, didn't touch, and being able to do that for her child gave her meaning until the very end.
Sara, can I pick up on this point of legacy a little bit? And maybe tell us a bit of what you've learned about legacy and how it shapes the experiences of the residents and caregivers and families.
I think what I've learned personally is that our residents are so much more than their illnesses that they come in with. They come in with gigantic stories. As I look around this room today and see so many faces of people that I've known over the 20 years, I have stories of each of those people in my heart and in my memory, and I think I'm so lucky to have been part of those stories and gotten to know so many people. Our residents do love to tell their stories with each other. They love to create friendships. I recently was speaking to a woman whose table mate had passed away at the age of 105, and she said, I should have known better than to make friends with a 105-year-old. What did I think was going to happen? But it's not being afraid to say hello to someone new, and it's never too late to make new connections, new friendships, discover new hobbies, and continue to live life every day.
And it's back to that first point of it's not just your diagnosis, it's who you are. Just the last question from me, and then we're going to open it up. Maybe Heather and Rabbi Matthew. The thought of faith or spiritual care practices. This is a Jewish care home, but there are others here who aren't necessarily Jewish. So, how does that play in with the care of older adults? Maybe if they were spiritual themselves, or if they weren't or had faith and then come to the home here, as they move through this kind of last part of life. Maybe Heather, and then we'll end with Eleanor.
So for my part of things, I see for individuals spirituality as individual, right? So it means such different things for different people. So for some, it's the comfort piece, right? Falling back onto maybe what they learned when they were children, and maybe this wasn't something they practiced as adults even, but into older adulthood, there's that comfort again from spiritual pieces. Maybe it's hymns that were learned, prayers that were learned, taking part of services. For some, I would say that it's the community connection, right? So being a part of those services with your community. For some, I think some people are looking for answers, right? And maybe Rabbi would be able to later answer a little bit more to that. But I do find it so individual. And as you mentioned, Michael, we are Jewish faith-based, but we do have people of all different faiths and backgrounds here. And I remember one gentleman who was a Buddhist, and where he had found some meaning in spirituality at the place he was at was that he had shared with me in the Buddhist belief that you believe that you connect with your loved ones who have passed away in dreams. So he would go maybe for a lay down, and he would get up, and then he would come over and we would have a conversation, and his daughter had passed away as an adult, and he would share with the other people the lovely visit that he had had with his daughter, right? And for him specifically, that's where he found his meaning. So I just think it's very individual for each.
A lot of the things that we do in Jewish tradition, but even in our non-denominational services and our Christian-based services that we do for the residents who are not Jewish, involves music. And music has this incredible place in a personal care home and its ability to connect with people. Particularly if you know someone or if you've had someone close to you who has dementia or other forms of memory loss that are severe, it's incredible what music can unlock for these people. We just had the Spiritual Health Awareness Week, it was just concluded. We had an event earlier in the week at St. Boniface Hospital, and I was sharing the story from when I was very young, and I worked at the old Sharon home with Stephen Hyman, and we used to go to the 5th floor, where that was the locked unit, and we used to sing songs. I used to play the piano, and we would just sing. And I remember one lady in particular who it was clear she didn't recognize her family who sat with her or anyone, was singing along perfectly. We were playing O Se Shalom one day. And we have residents here, this happens all the time. A nice lady I'm thinking of who lives on our locked unit on Simkin 2 who will ask me in between every song, "Who are you?" And during the song, if it's a Yiddish song, knows every single word. That was fantastic. Who are you? All at the same time, it's a lot to process. But when I think of the power of spirituality, and it's particularly what music reminds me of, is it's one of these things that it runs a thread through people's lives from beginning to end. They can connect to it, no matter where they end up or where we end up or where we get to. These things, the community connections that Heather was talking about, the place in our brain and our soul where music in particular gets stored, it connects us to ourselves. If you understand what I mean, it connects us to the past of ourselves, to things that we believe. It connects us to ourselves. I'm going to say that, and I'm going to end with that.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And thank you, everybody on the panel. I think we have a few minutes for questions from the audience. Maybe I'll open it up. I think we have a mic. Does anybody have a question they want to start with? You put your hand up. Okay, got a few hands. Perfect.
My question is, why is it so difficult for so many of us to be with people who are either unwell or dying? For some of us, it's so difficult, and for others, it's a natural interaction. And I wonder about that.
Thank you for that. Anybody? All right.
That's a great question. And listen, we're all unique individuals. We all have different kind of psychological, emotional, spiritual wiring. So we can't necessarily blame ourselves for being who we are. I mean, it's just a particular way of being in the world. But, are there some reasons that make it more difficult? I think there is an expectation that somehow people feel if they're going to arrive at that scene, that they need to know what to do. They need to have a way of somehow either curing it. In medicine, we talk about fixing it, making it better. And the insight to leave you with is that it becomes much easier when you understand that the thing that makes a difference is showing up. I've been writing about something that I've coined intensive caring. It's an approach that I've been talking about with healthcare providers and with family members. It's a way of trying to be with people where there isn't a readily available fix. And it consists of, first of all, show up. Secondly, if you're going to show up, just take an interest in that person in whatever way they would see meaningful, whether it's through storytelling or asking about what they had for dinner. Take an interest. 3, knowing that just your presence matters. I mean, think about the last time you went to a Shiva call. The difference you made wasn't because of anything you said. You don't have the words to undo, what's happened. But just knowing that showing up makes a difference. 4, knowing that when you show up, good things can happen. It changes the spiritual chemistry. And those of us who work in palliative care certainly can tell you, a lifetime's worth, a career's worth of the things that can happen. And the 5th thing is humility. If you're going to allow yourself to enter into that space, be humble. Don't create an expectation that somehow you're going to be able to fix everything. And if you can kind of take that on, then it makes it possible for you to enter into that space without somehow feeling, overly daunted or responsible for the terrible thing that you can't stop from happening.
Thank you. Anyone else? I think we had another question. Yes.
Does the Simkin Center have a policy in respect to maid medical assistants in dying? And have there been any maids in the Simkin Center? And this is particularly because I think several people emphasize the policy of the Simkin Center to allow choice, particularly in those who are not cognitively impaired.
So our stance is that this is the resident's home and they are welcome to invite whoever they would like into it. So if a resident expresses an interest in learning more about medical assistance in dying, we are more than happy to help them seek the resources that they need, whether that's giving them a phone number to call or an email address, or helping them make a phone call if they are wanting to inquire about medical assistance in dying and if they would be eligible for it. This is the resident's home. We just take up space in it so they can have who they want and receive the care and service that they would want to receive.
Thank
You
you.
didn't answer the second part of your question.
You're right, I didn't, and I chose not to protect the privacy of residents that have reached out to the medical assistance in dying team, and respecting that how a resident dies is not as important as the life that they lead.
Thank you. Was there one more question? Okay, if there isn't, maybe what we'll do is a last word to each of the panels. And Rabbi Matthew, we'll start with you so that they don't say what you were going to say.
No way. I like building on what everybody else says because it's such good answers. A last word. Oh my gosh. I will tell you something that occurred to me. Maybe it complements our conversation. But I sometimes think about, I try to relate to a lot of the people that I visit, and I try to see myself in them and their families. And I become friendly with a number of guys who have moved their wives into the Simkin Center. And I have a picture on my office desk of a guy that everyone just assumes is my grandfather. He's not. His name's Leonard Bakalinsky, and I met him because he was a very friendly guy. He used to come here almost daily to visit his wife, and he gave me a picture of an old rabbi that was so ugly, and I said, I don't want that. He said, well, I wanted to give you a picture of a rabbi. I said, I'd rather you give me a picture of yourself. So he gave me a picture of him, and he thought I was joking, and it's on my desk. But he, like a lot of guys, I could see whether he was telling me or not, and a lot of times they weren't telling me, but they were struggling with how often to come and visit their wives. So my last word will be about what I told him. I said that you're the only person who knows the answer. But if there's going to be somebody out there who would have the audacity to make you feel like you're not visiting enough, well, I think you should see them way less than we were visiting in Simkin. And if you're coming so often that it's starting to get in the way of the fact that you have a life, I think you need to be honest with yourself about that too. You need to find a balance. Everybody's balance is going to be very, very different. Whether you're a resident here, whether you're visiting a resident here, whether you're anybody, you have to find that balance. But in particular, I was thinking about him and other fellows in that situation and saying that sometimes you can't go every day. It's not as helpful in the end as you think it might be. And when he would go and he would play pickleball on Wednesdays, Leonard Bakalinsky would tell me, I'm playing pickleball, I took your advice, just don't go looking for me. I said, well, I hope that it's your advice and that it's working. So that would be my last word.
Thank you. Harvey.
So on a personal note, I think I just wanted to say, right, I have worked here at Simkin. I'm going into my 25th year, actually. And thank you. So I actually have to say that for myself, having met all of the day program participants at one time, the residents here at Simkin, I have learned so much from people that I have met who have shared their experience and their wisdom, and I genuinely feel that it's made me a better person because it's opened up my horizons, so to speak, right? Different opinions, different thoughts. So I did just want to share that, right? I know as staff people that we do things for our residents, but we also get back from our residents.
I think it's important to remember that the hard times don't last forever, and that while your loved one is in care or while you're a resident in care, those might be hard times, those might be hard years, but those aren't the memories, that's not your legacy. We're going to remember sitting around the dinner table on Friday nights. That's what's going to be spoken about you in 5 or 10 years after you pass away. It's not always the final days of life. So those times feel really hard and feel like that pain won't go away. But once that pain does go away, there's so many more important memories that we can hold with us. Offering comfort to people who can't talk to us anymore is really hard. But thinking about what that person loved, and maybe that's strawberry lip gloss, and somebody that can't talk to us anymore but always likes strawberry lip gloss on, helping them put that on, or adding some flavor into their water. Just those small things that make you feel really good that you've been able to do something, but holding on to the good times that added a lot more life to our years than the final days.
It's true. So, final word. One of the things that's come to me over the years has been that even though I've been doing my research in palliative care all these years, one of the discoveries is that the things that seem important near end of life turn out to be important across the entirety of life. So it's not that dignity, kindness, compassion, these ideas about seeing somebody, affirming them, it's not that those things suddenly become important when somebody's only got a little bit of time left. It turns out that those things are important throughout the entirety of life. So, start young carry it forward throughout your life. Kindness, compassion, dignity, and taking an interest in other people and finding out those stories. I think that will, will make your life better. It will make the life of the person that you're speaking with better. And those are the kind of connections that, whose meaning you will carry with you the rest of your days. Maybe just one last thing. I have sort of a half-baked thought, and that is, the people who live here, you need to know that you are really role models. You are modeling for us how to kind of navigate what it's like to be getting older, how you kind of work that through. The fact is that all of us are headed that way, and you are kind of teaching us by example, what works, how we might be able to emulate some of your wisdom. So don't forget that. What you are doing in living your lives is not only living your lives, but creating a role model for everyone who bears witness to, what you're going through now, or this stage of your life.
Thank you all for that. I think it's kind of really important to hear the four different perspectives, right, that all of you brought to the table. And I think something we heard, my wife and I and my brothers, when my mother was here, is that notion of this is her home, and this becomes her home. And for my mother, home was everything, right? And her children was everything. That's what she lived for, was to build that home, and then to come here and to have a place that saw it the same way. And it's just a little thing, and maybe this happens with all the people who live here, but with my mother on the floor, they would call her Mama. And that's what she was, that's what she loved, and it was that kind of personal touch which really made a difference in her life, her end of life, and then in us as children, knowing that she was well cared for, and she was getting the care that she needed. So thank you all for reminding us of the important parts of the experience that people have, whether they're in a home or whether they're at home or whether they're outside. But that notion that we should live our life with dignity and those values of empathy and kindness. That, as Dr. Chochinov said, that's not just something at the end of the way, that's something we need to carry through life. So I want to thank you all again, and thank everybody for coming. And I think that there's a reception.
There's a reception, and myself and Rena just wanted to speak for a minute.
Okay, please, come.
Hi everyone, can you hear me? Yeah. Okay, awesome. Well, thank you all for being with us here today. I think it was a fabulous presentation. Thank you to all of our panelists and our moderator. The Simkin Center of Chesed Shel Emes will be making a donation to the charity of choice in honor of you and your in doing this. So thank you very much. I wanted to thank the Chesed Shel Emes for partnering in this endeavor with us. And I also wanted to say that our families and our residents continue to inspire me every single day. And I hope that my husband loves me as much as some of the husbands that I see visiting every day. You're just so dedicated, and it's beautiful to see. Rena, was there something that you wanted to add?
Good afternoon. Just as mentioned, this program is a partnership between Simkin Center and Chesed Shel Emes. Chesed Shel Emes, for those who may not be familiar, we are the Jewish Community Nonprofit Burial Society. And really, the underpinnings, our name, Chesed Shel Emet, means true loving kindness. And talking about compassion, kindness throughout all of life, that also underpins our work at the end of life. So just wanted to thank the panelists, thank everyone for coming today. When we talk about things end of life, we really are talking about living. And we're always very happy to be able to bring forward programming that is both thoughtful, and heartfelt. And thank you all for coming today.
Dr. Chochinov has donated 10 copies of his book, Dignity and Care, The Human Side of Medicine. This book has been given at the white coat ceremony for medical students the last 2 years. And 10 of you will find under your chair a little sticker, a pink sticker that says winner. So if you're a winner, come up and get your book. And thank you, Dr. Chochinov. Thank you, everyone. We have nosh and refreshments outside. Thank you for coming.